It just happened. He showed me a world you could never give me. Don't make a scene, my girlfriend said after ditching me for a rich tourist on our vacation. I obeyed, went home, and vanished. Now she's alone, ghosted by her upgrade, who gave her a fake name and number, screaming into the void I left behind. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The silence on this private stretch of beach is the loudest thing I've ever heard. It's 5:17 a.m. The sky is bleeding from bruised purple into a soft orange that feels like a mockery. My feet are buried in the cool, damp sand, and the only thing I can feel is the ghost of my phone vibrating in my hand. The text message burned onto the back of my eyelids. Don't wait up. Don't make a scene. We'll talk tomorrow. It's so perfectly, brutally her. A command, a dismissal, and a postponement of consequences, all in 10 words. I let out a breath I feel like I've been holding for 2 days and finally let the memory in. Not of the text, but of what led to it. The vacation that was supposed to fix us. It was my idea. I'd been buried in a high-stakes project at the architecture firm for 6 months, working late, bringing stress home. Chloe had started to feel more like a polite roommate than my fiancé. I saw the distance in her eyes, a flicker of boredom when I'd talk about load-bearing walls and permit delays. So, I booked the all-inclusive resort in Mexico. A week of sun, sand, and us. No work emails. No distractions. You did this for us, she'd said when I showed her the confirmation, a genuine smile touching her lips for the first time in weeks. She kissed me, and for a moment, it felt like old times. It's perfect, Mark. Thank you. That was 5 days ago. The first 2 were perfect. We swam, we drank overpriced cocktails, we made love with the balcony doors open to the sound of the ocean. I felt the knot in my chest loosening. This was working. Then, on day 3, we met Liam. He was at the swim-up bar, the center of a small orbit of people. Tanned, expensively groomed, with the easy, loud confidence of someone who's never been told no. We swam up to order drinks, and he immediately locked onto Chloe. Don't see many women who can wear a plain black one-piece with that much confidence, he said, his voice a smooth, practiced baritone. Refreshing. Chloe, who usually hated cheesy lines, blushed and laughed. Well, thank you. Liam, he said, extending a hand. He didn't even look at me. And you are a vision that just improved this entire resort's Yelp rating. That was his thing. Everything was a commodity, a rating, a transaction. He was in venture capital, which, after 20 minutes, seemed to mean he talked a lot about crypto and his network, and very little about anything tangible. But Chloe was mesmerized. She laughed at his jokes, her hand resting on his tanned forearm as the conversation drifted from the quality of the resort's champagne to his private villa with its own infinity pool. I tried to engage. So, what ventures are you capitalizing on down here? I asked, trying to sound interested, not challenging. Liam finally looked at me, a slow, appraising glance that ended with a slight, dismissive smile. I'm scoping out a potential acquisition. Beautiful place, beautiful people. The opportunities find you if you know how to look. His eyes flicked back to Chloe. The rest of the day was a masterclass in subtle erosion. By the pool, Liam held court, and Chloe was his most attentive student. Liam says he just jet sets to Monaco for the weekend on a friend's yacht. She whispered to me, her eyes wide. Can you imagine? I can't, I said flatly. I've got that project in Schenectady. She sighed, a soft, disappointed sound. It's not about the money, Mark. It's about the energy, the spontaneity. That word, energy. It became her weapon. My energy was heavy. My energy was serious. Liam's energy was magnetic. That night was the resort's white party. The place was thumping with electronic music, and everyone was dressed in flowing, pristine white. Chloe wore a stunning, backless dress she'd bought just for the trip. I told her she looked incredible. She gave me a distracted smile and scanned the crowd until she found him. Liam, in a ridiculously white linen suit, was already pouring champagne for a group of people. He saw her, raised a glass, and she was pulled into his orbit as if by a physical force. I watched from a table, nursing a beer. I watched him whisper in her ear. I watched her throw her head back and laugh, a real, unforced laugh I hadn't heard in months. I watched his hand find the small of her bare back, a possessive, intimate gesture. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. The slow burn of anger and humiliation finally boiled over. I walked over, the music pounding in my chest. Chloe, I said, my voice tighter than I intended. Can I talk to you for a second? She turned, her eyes slightly glazed from champagne and adoration. What is it, Mark? Over here, I said, gesturing away from the crowd. She rolled her eyes, but followed me a few steps. God, can you just relax? We're on vacation. Don't be so boring. The word hit me like a slap. Boring. The antithesis of everything Liam represented. I'm not being boring, Chloe. I'm being your boyfriend, I said, keeping my voice low. The way he's touching you, this is disrespectful. To me. To us. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and contempt. He's just a fun guy, Mark. He's not heavy like you. He's just alive. She shrugged, a delicate, infuriating motion. Don't be so serious. She turned her back on me and walked over to Liam, who smirked at me over her shoulder before she pulled him onto the dance floor. They moved together, a tangle of limbs and white fabric, her body pressed against his. It wasn't just dancing. It was a performance. For him, for the crowd, and most of all, for me. That was my cue to leave. I went back to our room, the air conditioning humming a cold, lonely tune. I sat on the bed and waited. An hour. 2. The party downstairs faded. The resort grew quiet. I must have dozed off. The buzz of my phone on the nightstand jolted me awake. The screen glowed in the dark room. 3:42 a.m. It was from Chloe. Don't wait up. Don't make a scene. We'll talk tomorrow. I read it once. Then again. The words didn't change. I got up, walked out of the room, and found my way to this empty beach. I left my phone on the bed. I didn't want it with me. Now, as the sun finally crests the horizon, painting the ocean in fiery gold, I feel a strange, cold clarity. The knot in my chest is gone. In its place is a hollow, quiet space. She told me not to make a scene. She has no idea what I'm about to do. The sun was fully above the horizon now, a clean, sharp line between the sea and the sky. The world felt washed, new, and I felt empty, not in a broken way, but in a neutral, functional way, like a room that had been cleared of all its furniture. There was space to move. I walked back to the room, my steps measured in quiet. The resort was stirring, a staff member wiping down loungers, the distant clink of breakfast service, but it felt like I was moving through a different world entirely. The room was as I'd left it, the bed still wrinkled from where I'd slept alone. Chloe's white dress was a discarded puddle on the floor. Her sandals lay kicked off by the balcony door. The evidence of her life, of our life, now looked like clutter. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I felt a profound and simple need to be gone. Methodically, I opened my suitcase and packed. It took less than 10 minutes. I folded my clothes with a robotic precision I didn't know I possessed. Then, I did the same with hers. I zipped her suitcase closed and set it by the door, next to her purse. A neat, contained parcel of a person who no longer existed in my world. I showered, the hot water sluicing away the salt and sweat of the long night. I dressed in clean, comfortable clothes for travel. And then I sat in the chair by the window, waiting. I didn't look at my phone. I just watched the palm trees outside, their fronds stirring in the morning breeze. The keycard clicked in the lock at 8:07 a.m. She slipped in, looking triumphant, but tired. Her makeup was smudged, her hair a mess of yesterday's styling and whatever had happened last night. She smelled of stale champagne and someone else's cologne. She saw me sitting there, fully dressed, our suitcases by the door, and her smug expression faltered for a second. "You're up early," she said, her voice raspy. She headed for the mini fridge and pulled out a bottle of water. "I've been up," I said. My voice was calm, flat. It didn't even sound like mine. She took a long drink, watching me over the bottle. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to gauge my mood, to prepare her script. "Look, Mark," she began, putting on a performative sigh. "About last night, it just happened. He's on a different frequency, you know? He showed me a world you could never give me." She said it like she was revealing a profound truth. "It's not about money, it's about energy. He's alive." I just looked at her. I let the words hang in the air, let their absurd, cliched cruelty echo in the silent room. She had practiced this, I realized. She had expected a reaction. "Aren't you going to say anything?" she asked, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. "Aren't you going to fight for me? Yell? Something?" I stood up. I picked up her suitcase and held it out to her. "No," I said, my tone as even as if I were commenting on the weather. "You made your choice." She stared at the suitcase, then back at my face, her confidence visibly crumbling into confusion. "So that's it?" she stammered, refusing to take the luggage. "You're just leaving?" "You left last night," I said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a simple, factual statement. I set the suitcase down beside her, picked up my own bag and my backpack. I walked to the door. I didn't look back at her, at the room, at the shattered remains of our future. I opened the door and stepped out into the bright, indifferent hallway. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound as final as a tomb seal. I didn't go to the airport. Not yet. I went to the front desk. A cheerful young woman greeted me. "I was in room 412 with Chloe Anderson," I said, my voice still unnaturally calm. "I'm checking out early. I've settled my personal incidentals. The room is paid for through Saturday for her. Any further charges are hers alone." The woman's smile became slightly strained, but she processed it without comment. "Of course, sir. I hope you enjoyed your stay." I gave her a small, meaningless smile. It was very enlightening. I got a taxi. The driver loaded my bag. As we pulled away from the resort, I caught a final glimpse of the pristine pools, the perfect beach. It looked like a postcard for a life I was no longer in. On the flight home, I stared out the window at the endless blue. The man who had flown down here, hopeful and anxious to fix things, was gone. He'd been dismantled piece by piece. In his place was someone new, someone quiet, someone who understood, with cold, absolute clarity, that the most powerful response to a nuclear bomb is not to build a bigger one. It's to move entirely out of the blast radius. And for the first time since I'd heard her laugh with him, I felt a sense of peace. It was a vast, empty, and strangely powerful peace. It was the peace of letting go. The key turned in the lock of my apartment with a definitive thud. The air inside was still and smelled faintly of the lemony cleaner we both hated. The word echoed falsely in the silence. There was no we anymore. I dropped my bags by the door and did a slow circuit. The framed photo from our hike in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The ugly, garish vase her mother had given us that she insisted on keeping on the mantel. The half-finished crossword puzzle book on her side of the couch. It was a museum of a life that had just been declared null and void. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I got to work. I started with my phone. I went into the settings and turned off read receipts for iMessage. Then, I opened my contacts. My thumb hovered over her name for only a second before I tapped block. Instagram. Blocked. Facebook. Blocked. WhatsApp. Deleted the chat and blocked. It was like performing surgery on my own life, cutting out a malignant, necrotic organ. There was no emotion to it, only necessity. Next, the locks. I called a 24-hour locksmith. While I waited, I began gathering her things. Not with anger, but with the detached efficiency of an estate executor. Her clothes from the closet and dresser, folded into moving boxes I had in the storage closet. Her extensive collection of skincare products from the bathroom. The books on her nightstand. I didn't read the inscriptions. I didn't linger on the memories attached to a particular sweater. It was all just inventory now. By the time the locksmith arrived and replaced the deadbolt, her presence in the apartment had been reduced to a neat stack of 6 cardboard boxes in the living room. The next day, I rented a small storage unit a 10-minute drive away. I moved the boxes there, taped the key to the unit and a piece of paper with the access code inside a small envelope. I addressed it to her and left it with the building's super. "Chloe will be by for this," I told him. He just nodded. The silence in the apartment was no longer oppressive. It was mine. It was clean. The first call came 2 days later. It was her sister, Jessica. The tone was accusatory from the first word. "Mark, what the hell is going on? Chloe is hysterical. She says you changed the locks and stole all her stuff." I took a slow breath, my voice level. "Jessica, her things are in a storage unit. The information is with the super. As for what's going on, that's Chloe's story to tell. I don't have anything to add. She said you abandoned her in Mexico. Who does that?" "She's right," I said calmly. "I did leave, and I'm sure she can explain exactly why. Have a good day, Jessica." I ended the call and blocked the number. A day after that, it was her mother. "Mark, dear, we're all so worried. This is so unlike you. Can't we just talk this through? Couples have spats." "This wasn't a spat, Carol," I said, my tone polite but firm. "The relationship is over. I'm not interested in discussing it further. Please don't call this number again." Click. Block. Their voices were like faint, irritating static from a radio station I no longer listened to. They held no power over the quiet certainty that had settled in my bones. With the external noise muted, I began to build. My life became a simple, purposeful trinity: my body, my mind, my work. I joined a gym. Not the overpriced boutique one Chloe liked, but a no-frills, iron-and-sweat warehouse of a place. I went every day after work. The burn in my muscles, the gasp for air after a set of deadlifts. It was a pain I could understand and master. It scrubbed the lingering psychic residue from my system. I dug out my old acoustic guitar, its case dusty from neglect. I started learning again, my fingers slowly relearning the chords, filling the apartment with something other than silence or the echo of her voice. And I worked. With the mental energy I'd once spent worrying about the relationship, analyzing her moods, and planning couple-centric activities, I dove into my projects at the firm. I was sharper, more focused. My boss, David, pulled me aside 3 weeks after I got back. "Mark, the Scheherazade Tower revisions, they're brilliant. The client is over the moon. I don't know what's gotten into you, but keep it up. There's a principal position opening up next quarter. I'm putting your name in the hat." I just nodded. "Thank you, David. I appreciate it." The news of her unraveling reached me in fragments, through the one conduit I hadn't blocked, my friend, Ben, who was still loosely connected to Chloe's social circle. We were at a bar, watching a game. He took a long pull from his beer and glanced at me. "So you heard, I take it?" "Heard what?" I asked, my eyes on the screen. "About Chloe. The whole Mexico thing blew up in her face. Spectacularly." I took a sip of my drink, saying nothing. He took it as a cue to continue. "Turns out the guy, Liam, was a complete fraud. Gave her a fake name, a fake number. The private villa was just a day pass he'd sweet-talked his way into. He ghosted her the morning after. Left her stranded. She had to pay for a whole new flight home herself." I nodded slowly, absorbing the information. There was no schadenfreude, no feeling of vindication. It was just data. A predictable outcome from a flawed premise. "And it gets better," Ben continued, a grim smile on his face. "She came back, tail between her legs, only to find her key didn't work and all her worldly possessions were in storage. The story's gotten around. Let's just say her friends aren't feeling very sympathetic. They think she shit the bed and is surprised it smells." I finally looked at him. "Ben," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I don't want to know any of it. It's not my concern anymore." He looked surprised, then nodded in understanding. "Right. Sorry, man. You're better off." He was right. But it wasn't about being better off. It was about being elsewhere entirely. While her world was collapsing into the drama and consequences she had created, mine was being built on a foundation of quiet, deliberate action. The two realities were no longer connected. The bridge was burned, and I wasn't even looking back at the smoke. The peace held for a month. A solid, uninterrupted 30 days of routine, progress, and silence. I was in the best shape of my life. My work was receiving accolades, and the empty space in my apartment had been filled with a sense of self-possession I hadn't known was possible. The first breach was a text. I was reviewing blueprints at my kitchen table, the phone face down beside me. It buzzed. I flipped it over. "Unknown number. Mark, it's Chloe. I'm back. We need to talk. I made a huge mistake." I read the words. I felt nothing. No lurch in my stomach. No quickening of my pulse. It was like reading a weather alert for a city I no longer lived in. I placed the phone back on the table, screen down, and returned to my work. After a minute, I picked it up again and blocked the number. The silence returned for another week. Then, my phone vibrated with a call from a different unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. An hour later, curiosity, or perhaps the need for finality, made me listen. Her voice was thin, trembling, a pathetic imitation of the confident woman from the resort. "Hey, it's me. Please, just talk to me." He was a liar. He used me. "I get it now. You're the real one. You're stable. You're good. I'm so sorry. Please." There was a muffled sob, then the call ended. I deleted the voicemail. "You're the real one. Not, I love you. Not, I was a fool." I was just the real option compared to the fantasy that had crumbled. It was an insult disguised as an apology. I thought that might be the end of it. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday evening. I had just finished a brutal but satisfying session at the gym. The endorphins were coursing through me, and I was feeling strong, clear-headed. I walked out into the cool night air of the parking lot, my gym bag slung over my shoulder, heading for my car. "Mark." The voice was raw, desperate. I turned. She was leaning against the hood of a beat-up sedan I didn't recognize, her arms wrapped around herself as if she were cold. She looked diminished. The vibrant, dismissive woman from Mexico was gone. Her hair was lank, her face was pale and drawn, and her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Standing there in my sweat-damp t-shirt, feeling the solid power in my own body, the contrast was almost shocking. I didn't say anything. I just waited. She pushed off the car and took a hesitant step forward. "You can't just ignore me forever. We were together for 4 years. Her voice cracked on the last word. I remained silent, my expression neutral. I was a rock, and her words were just water. "Say something," she pleaded, her composure breaking. Tears started to well in her eyes. "Please, just talk to me. Can I help you?" I asked. My voice was calm, flat. The same tone I'd used with the hotel clerk. It was the wrong thing to say. It was the right thing to say. It broke her completely. "Help me," she cried, her voice rising into a wail. "Look at me. I lost everything. My home, my friends, you." He was a monster. A lying, pathetic monster. She was waiting for me to comfort her. To tell her it was okay. To open my arms and let her back into the stability she had so carelessly discarded. I looked at her, at the raw, messy display of consequence. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said. It wasn't an expression of sympathy. It was a dismissal, a way of saying her emotional state was her own to manage. The tears stopped. Her face, blotchy and wet, hardened. The anger I knew was always there, simmering beneath the surface, finally flashed in her eyes. "That's it. Sorry I feel that way. You were supposed to be the good guy? Why are you being so cruel?" There it was. The true colors. I wasn't the good guy for walking away with dignity. I was cruel for not absorbing her toxicity back into my life. For not playing my part in her drama. It was the final confirmation I needed. The last thread, now severed. I took a small step forward, not to close the distance, but to ensure my next words landed with the weight they deserved. My voice was still quiet, but it was now edged with a finality that could cut glass. "Chloe, you told me not to make a scene." I let the words hang in the air between us, letting her remember the text, the dismissal, the utter contempt of that moment. So I didn't. I simply accepted your decision and moved on. I gestured vaguely in her direction, a motion that encompassed all of her. The tears, the desperation, the drama. "The man you're looking for," I continued, my gaze steady and direct. "The one who would care about this, who would fight for you. Yell, make a scene. You left him in that resort room. I don't know who you are anymore, and frankly, I have no desire to." She stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. The anger had been replaced by a dawning, horrifying understanding. The power she had held, the power of my attention, my love, my pain, was gone. Completely. I was a stranger. "So," she whispered, her voice hollow. "We're done." I gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of my head. I wasn't angry. I was bored. "We've been done," I said, my tone making it clear this was the most obvious fact in the world. "I've moved on. You should try it." I didn't wait for a response. I turned my back on her, unlocked my car, and slid into the driver's seat. I didn't look in the rearview mirror as I started the engine and pulled out of the parking spot. I didn't look back as I drove away, leaving her standing there in the dim glow of the parking lot lights, a small, lonely figure who was now, and would forever be, utterly irrelevant. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.